Welcome back to our Sunday Truth Talk. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jone Bryndis, and thank you for coming here wherever you're catching me. If you see my eyes wandering back and forth, that's because I am simulcasting, between different screens. I hope you guys are having a good weekend. This is a weekend that has a lot to do with our relationships. And since we've talked about high vibe nutrition, ingesting only what is good for us, only what is life supporting and loving for us, I thought it was a good idea to talk about relationships and what a high vibe relationship is or what it could look like. And of course, also the problems that can arise with relationships, and especially for those of us who are on this journey of expressing their higher goals and how this can sometimes also be a trap. I wanted to cover some aspects with you guys that go all the way from what is high vibe relationship, inner and outer, karmic relationships, even twin soul relationships, and what these aspects are that we need to look at if we are really interested in the energetic aspect of relationships. So I want you guys to ask a lot of questions, if possible, here live. I already have a lot of questions that were sent in. All right. I want to thank you guys all for asking these wonderful questions. They will, of course, immediately sort of set the tone here for what I'm going to present to you. Yes, so I've mentioned how this weekend is a really important weekend for reflecting on relationships. Many of you guys may have had this family gathering in this past week. So I want to point out that these truth talks that we do on Sunday, that they relate to current energy. So what used to be the energy update here is now the Sunday truth talk. And today I would like to talk about high vibe relationships. All right, so when we look at relationships, whether it's a relationship with food, we covered this the last 2 weeks, or the relationship with other people, we also need to look at our inner relationship. So there is this inner and outer relationship, and many of you are aware of the mirroring effect of that. So the general understanding here of what a high vibe relationship is needs to also look at your inner relationship. All right, so we have this attitude towards our life, towards our body, towards our emotions, towards our thoughts, and also towards our spiritual beliefs, and those of you who are aware of them, also towards our energetic well-being altogether. So whether it's our inner or outer relationships, we have these different layers, these different levels on which we interact with the world. And this is very, very important to understand for making decisions in relationship, for selecting a partner, for making choices that allow a relationship to grow, that allow a relationship to increase in quality. So high vibe as a sort of buzzword here is really just another way of saying the higher expression of what we want to put into life, of what we want to get out of life. And that means that we have to learn how to regulate some of the aspects, the lower aspects of ourselves, and somehow find a way to harmonize this with our higher vibratory aspects, the aspects that come in through what we are feeling here through the unseen. So let me repeat this here. When it comes to the quality of our relationships, and again, please don't see high vibe or low vibe as a judgment. It really is just the energetic view of how we approach what we are experiencing, okay? And there always is this duality in us, that we have sort of drives and things that uh, are in the unconscious, okay, that make us do things against better knowing, okay, those could be seen as the lower vibratory aspects of ourselves and, you know, our expression, the lower expression of who we are, namely the one that is driven by our moods, that is driven by our own greed, by our own pain, by our own fears. High vibe means that it's driven by the higher expression that we are trying to go into with this life, that we don't just try to survive our life, that we don't just try to get by, we don't just sort of try to tag along. We want to feel a meaning, we want to feel a purpose in life, and we want to bring this into expression. And it is already hard enough to do this for us as individuals. But when it comes to relationships, of course, all these difficulties, all these challenges that come with, you know, the higher quality, the higher expression of who we are, they begin to multiply. And with your questions that you send in, I could tell that there are a lot of issues for those of you who are on this journey of self-mastery or self-awareness in your relationship. So a lot of questions sounded something like, is it even possible to have a relationship when one of the two, or not to have, but to maintain a relationship when one of the two partners begins to excel, begins to really grow into their higher expression, and how can this be harmonized? I really want to address this part. This is something that keeps coming up here in this sacred self-healing community that we have here at transCODES all the time. How can I shifts and changes that are happening within me or that I want to bring into expression, how can I harmonize this with my partner? And is this even possible? So let's look at our inner relationship first. Whatever the question is that you have in regards to what a good or high vibe relationship is, I can give you one simple answer here as energy coach. The better your inner relationship, the better your connection with your body, with your emotions, with your thoughts and beliefs, and your spiritual expression, all right? The better your connection with your wants and needs on all these levels, the better your outer relationships with other people become. Why is this? Because the inner relationship that we build with ourselves, that we all have to build, and let's be truthful about this, let's be direct about this. This takes a lot of skill, this takes a lot of work. The relationship with ourselves takes a lot of work, guys. We are not born with an understanding of who we are and what we came here for. This has to be developed. And many of us go through these different developmental stages and already have relationships, already have relationship patterns, already have things that they don't understand why they keep sort of expressing in this painful way, all right? And yet we keep finding ourselves in the same place. Who of you, let me ask you this, who of you has had several relationships in their life with different partners, even with different maybe co-workers or friends, and end up being in the same place with, you know, at the end of those relationships, or, you know, while you're still in it? Who of you has had this experience over and over again, that no matter what relationship you are engaging in, that you seem to end up in the same place, either that it is that you're being betrayed, that you're being abused, that you're being lied to, or, you know, that you aren't heard, that your needs and your wants aren't really coming to an expression? This is something that actually led me to really reflect on what is going on. All right, I've lived in many different countries. I've even conducted relationship in different languages with different cultures, and different collectives. And somehow, regardless of the variety of these relationships that I went through, I always end up feeling that I have been misunderstood, that I have not been taken into account, that I gave more than I received. And this is, of course, my specialty here as a codependent empath, all right, having had the insight that this is really what led to the issues in my relationships, all right. This had to do with me and not with the partners. And yet, most of my relationships basically derived around what they did wrong, what they didn't do, what they said, and what they didn't say. Yes, Ron, and you've also come to this insight, right? That that some of these codependent patterns, for instance, that they repeat for you. Well, not everybody out there is a codependent, but a lot of people who have these goals in life to really live in a mutual and sort of respectful and empathetic relationship seem to have issues with codependency, and we're going to go into this, why this is the case. But there can be other issues as well. This doesn't necessarily mean that all people who want high vibe relationships are codependents. Those generalizations are things that really lower the vibe of anything, even our attitude towards things. So having an insight about yourself, understanding that there are things going on within yourself, all right, that might not have anything to do with others or even with your environment, the world that you live in altogether, is an extremely important part of relationship skills. It is only then when you realize that the outside world is not really what produces or what creates your relationship within yourself. It is that there are aspects in you that are in the unseen that are playing out, that determine the relationship internally and externally. And this is the bridge for me to talk about what these skills are that we even need for a higher vibrational relationship. And I want to start out here with what a higher relationship or higher vibrational relationship could look like. I hope you can see this on the screen. There are multiple aspects to a higher vibrational relationship, but I think the most important one for all of us here is the exchange part, is the part where we really want, to go into this back and forth. We don't want the relationship to be single-sided. We don't want to be the one that loves and the other one doesn't love us back. We don't want to be the one that is, investing, that is putting in a lot of energy and the other one doesn't. We don't want to feel betrayed in our trust. We don't want to feel that, we always have to walk on eggshells or that we always have to please the other. We want to trust. We want to have this feeling of mutual goals in our relationship, so that we can feel that we can choose to be vulnerable, that we can, feel okay with showing the deeper inner parts of us without needing to hide or to cope or, to be anybody else than we truly are. The problem for most of us, though, is that we come into a relationship not really knowing who we are, what we want, and what we need. So for many of us, our outer relationships are actually training situations for our inner relationships. Can you relate to that? I don't think that I would have been as motivated as I am today to go into this place of self-reflection and self-awareness, and to learn all these communicational skills and ultimately helping other people to learn how to bring themselves into better expression with others. If it wasn't for all these failed or these painful relationship experiences. How about you? There's so much that I've learned through my relationships that even though many of them could be perceived, or at the time I might have perceived them as painful, are now more or less like a gift, because they have trained me, all right, to become a better partner. And in this place of trying to become a better partner, I've also discovered how I can be a better partner with myself, how I can go into a better relationship with myself. Because guess what? Most of the issues that I've had in my life, in relationships, be it at work, be it with friends, be it in romantic relationships, were based on issues that I had with myself, be it with my body, be it with my emotions, things such as trauma, childhood, and so forth, be it with my thought structures and my beliefs, and be it with my spiritual aspirations, all right. And then later, as I became more and more trained in all these things, I even learned to read and work with the energetic, with the unseen, etheric aspects of relationships. And I don't think I would have learned all of this if it wasn't for becoming a better partner for myself and for others. Today, of course, I'm a mother, I'm a friend, I'm a wife, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a cousin, I'm all of these things, all right? And I see that whatever it is that I invest into my own inner relationship is what determines the quality of my outer relationships. And some of the things that, yes, oh my God, Ron, you've ditched a partner and got some dogs instead. That pretty much resolved many of your issues. This might sound a little funny, but for those of you who have come to a place of isolation maybe, or sort of repetitive disappointment, having a dog is not a bad training. All right, there is a wonderful healing in having a dog and caring for someone outside of yourself that is unconditionally committed to you. It can help you to connect with these parts in you, such as vulnerability and mutual care and empathy, as well as sort of listening to your partner's needs and so forth. Because dogs, and every single study that was done on the interaction between humans and dogs shows this or confirms this. Dogs need pretty much the same thing that we do. They need good food, they need lots of fresh air, they need lots of exercise, and they need lots of loving. And that's something that can sometimes help us. Sometimes it can also help a relationship, all right? So a dog obviously is not comparable with a partner, and it's also not a replacement for a partner, but it can teach us things. So when I was young, one of the things that I used as a benchmark for myself for knowing that I love someone, and this may sound a little funny, but I've been a dog person from childhood on, and I've been very, very dedicated to my dogs. And this was a benchmark for me, that when I feel towards a partner like I feel toward my dog, that's when I knew that I loved them. And obviously today I see this in a bit more sophisticated way, because a dog, of course, always stays in this dependency with you, okay? So it basically always stays a child. It always stays in this infantile emotional attachment with you, and therefore cannot be compared with a high vibe relationship. But it can teach you some of the fundamental skills, such as emotional regulation, such as empathy, such as really listening into the other person's needs, and this interaction. It can also teach you some of the bad things in relationships, namely habits, and how out of complacency or laziness or status quo, how we sort of look over things and allow bad habits to to become part of our relationship, how we sort of fool ourselves into, oh, everything is going to be fine. Who of you has ever had a really bad behaved dog in their lives? Where no matter how much you love your dog and how much you spend into whatever it is, training, food, all of this, the dog's just really bad behaved and creates a lot of havoc in your life. So this is the same with relationship, guys. We have to really look at these patterns that we allow to be installed, and that we enable sometimes through our passivity, through not really speaking up, through not really doing anything about this. And this is where the high vibe aspect of relationship comes in. It has to do with our integrity and our values, which are often, expressed through boundaries, through our communicational skills. So these pillars, all right, of a high vibe relationship are the exact same pillars of a high vibe inner relationship, and that is self-awareness, self-reflection, insight, like really looking into what am I truly feeling, what do I truly need, and what is what I'm perceiving here, okay? What is that based on, all right? Where am I at with my energy, and how am I seeing or maybe filtering some of the things that I'm perceiving here? The second part is, of course, the communication. So how well can I communicate my insights? How well can I express it? Speaking from the heart is a very sophisticated skill, guys, that not a lot of people actually heed. All right, negativity, for instance, negative communication, or sometimes also abusive or abrasive, degrading communication, if is sometimes impossible for us to recognize if we've lived in a family, or we were raised in a family where it was common, to degrade, or to not listen, to talk over people. All these aspects of communication, guys, in your relationship with yourself and others, they will all come to an expression. All right. So when you look at the negative aspects here of a relationship, all right, where there is a lot of push pull, and where you have a lot of negative communication, say where there is no empathy, where there is a exploitativeness, where there's no mutual exchange, where there's no trust, where there's things such as a lot of stonewalling, or guilt tripping, or a lot of anxiety, a lot of jealousy involved, all right, then this is something that really requires you to look into what these aspects are that you are communicating, that you are enabling, maybe through not communicating things, and that you are unable to see. And that then leads to the third really important part of relationships, and that is to understand that just like within your own relationship with yourself, authenticity and maturity, they have to grow, they have to be built, they have to develop. This whole sort of self-growth, process here is not an event happily ever after, just because you find, the perfect partner, your soulmate or whatever. It doesn't mean anything, because just like within the relationship with yourself, you're going to now have to implement all this. You're going to now have to integrate your values, and constantly work on, things such as honesty and mutuality and, boundaries and, speaking from the heart. Without this, your relationship cannot grow. And if your relationship cannot grow, then you basically have a not so good foundation for a lasting relationship. Because guess what, guys? And this is one of the major issues here in our societies, all right? We are all programmed, it's our divine nature to grow, to evolve, to expand. And the very definition of high vibe means life supporting, life embracing, expansive. All right. And all these negative aspects, or these contractive aspects of relationships that so many of us get trapped in over and over again, are based on us not understanding that a relationship with somebody else has to be just as integrous and just as honest and just as sort of truthful as our inner relationship. Now, we all, of course, have different values, and for some of us, we prefer, monogamous relationships. For others, we prefer this kind of relationship, this kind of relationship. This doesn't matter. High vibe, okay, is something that doesn't really have anything to do with your preferences. You can have preferences within a high vibe relationship, and all that really means is that you have to, learn to communicate those things and make sure that you both are aligned, that you both are in the same boat. And a growing relationship then means that you are beginning to see how, as you change, your relationship change. And this has to do with allowing all of this by holding on. And here we're diving into the deeper energetic aspects of relationships by trying to hold on to what you have. And this is the happy ever after myth or fantasy here. We are more or less falling in love with the idea of the relationship, or with the idea of a partner, all right, but not so much the actual execution of this, all right? So the actual doing it and allowing it to grow. So a high vibe relationship, guys, does not have space for control and manipulation patterns, needless to say, all right? It does have no space really for projection, and projection is something that I have addressed in another video here on this channel. It has no space for some of these aspects that we try to maybe approach some of our work relationships with, or relationships with friends and so forth. So everything that goes into the direction of identifying with something that we are not cannot be sustained in a high vibe relationship, because it needs to be based on truth. It needs to be based on authenticity, and those things are undermined through control and manipulation. So no matter, how you feel about your partner, as in like how perfect the match, all right, and how well you guys interact on, say, energetic levels, all right, or how great your sexuality is, or how great sort of your relationship looks on the outside, okay, it's got to be based on this integral value that you both share, and that must include growth. It must include the embracing self-growth. Only a growing relationship can be a happy and lasting relationship. So what can we do then, guys, in order to prevent all these unseen things, the things that we can't even see, those push-pull mechanisms? And this is the moment here where you guys can also ask questions. I'm going to put up another chart here for you. And this might be very surprising to some of you guys. because ultimately, what we really need to remember when it comes to relationships, right, is that they don't exist on their own. They exist because we allowed them to exist. Okay, so we agree to a relationship, and that means to all we are also agreeing to all the expressions of our relationship. And here is where most of our problems with boundaries comes in, especially for those of us who've already identified that they are a sort of codependent or addicts or co-narcissists in some way, that they keep attracting the same people over and over again. And here, is another aspect of that, namely that not every, but most studies on people's choices on how they select relationship partners have shown that 85% of us choose a partner that resembles one of our caretakers, typically father or mother. I think you guys have seen this, that some partners sorry, resemble maybe our fathers or our mothers. Excuse me. In order to what? In order to subconsciously relive the trauma, so that we can, or the trauma, the pain that we've experienced as a child. I apologize. In order to relive the pain that we've experienced as a child, the betrayal maybe, or not being able to speak up, or having to walk on eggshells, having not feeling safe in our relationships, so that we can heal this. So a high vibe relationship, guys, always also has a healing aspect in it. And that means that, whatever sort of the repetition or the pattern is that we can recognize, that needs to become an integral part of growing, or of the growth in our relationship. When we are trying to put our relationship into a form, all right, that requires us to over and over relive this pain of our childhood, all right, then we are not really in a growing relationship, and therefore we're just reenacting basically our childhood pain, our childhood attachments. And I want to spend a few minutes here with you to investigate these most common push-pull mechanisms between people, where we go out and then we pull back in, where we feel pulled in and where we feel pushed out again. Hot, cold, those are the things that most people complain about. And for you guys as energetically sensitives and empaths, this is probably the single most important piece of education that you can ingest, all right, to understand why your relationships typically end up being sort of power games, solar plexus power games, rather than actually the mutual loving and lasting relationship that you that you desire. Most of this has to do with us trying to be somebody that we are not, even if it is something that is something that we aren't even aware of. Okay, so let's say you've had a childhood where children were only supposed to be seen but not supposed to be heard. So you were conditioned to not actually speak your truth. You were basically told to only speak when asked, or when not to make any noises and so forth, and you were seen as an annoyance. Chances are that in your relationships you're going to have some of those similar patterns, and you will not really have had enough training to express your needs, to even be aware of them, but especially maybe even having a hard time to saying them out loud. And what happens as a result of this, and this is just one example, guys, is that you then begin to use other ways, okay, to let your partner know about your needs and your desires. And some of these most common mechanisms that we use for this is projecting. There's different kinds of projecting, and I want you to educate yourself on this. So please also look here on this video that I produced, why we absorb other people's energies. The most common one is emotional projecting, where, this is what psychology calls projection, where, we sort of try to make the other feel what we feel, or we try to make them give us what we want through the back door, basically, all right? There's many different ways of that, but like manipulation, emotional manipulation, guilt tripping, and so forth, coercion, those are the most typical forms of projecting, and they produce a push into the other person, and they force the other person to respond on that level. Energetically, projection happens on a much more in a much more subtle way, guys, and it's much more dangerous, actually, especially for empaths and energetically sensitives. But the main point being here that, anything that we are not expressing through our bodies, through our words, through our authenticity, all right, and our truthfulness with ourselves, ends up, sort of being projected to the other in one way or another through the back door, and leads to forms of manipulation or coercion, and can go as far as abuse. The opposite part of that, if you're on the receiving end of these projections, all right, if you are the one that is being projected onto, and especially if you're not aware of this, you can find yourselves in these places where you constantly feel like you have to hide, you have to pretend, you have to withhold, and you feel like a victim. You feel like you don't have the right to know, to want anything, to desire anything. And here is where all these skills that I've talked about earlier come in, where we really need to understand that if those are mechanisms that we recognize in our relationship, then we've already allowed this to be there. We've already allowed this to, establish. And probably one of the second most frequent questions that I've received is, how can we get out of this? Is this even possible to repair this? All right. In a high vibe relationship, it is possible, because both of you ideally have the same goal. You both want the relationship to grow, and yet you also want to grow as an individual. The skill to communicate all of this and to understand that this is a continual process of negotiating and renegotiating, reflecting and communicating, being truthful with another, being on this level of honesty, okay, that allows everything to be in the scene, all right, that prevents all this sort of unseen, enmeshed sort of energy, okay, that then creates all this fantasy bond, where you are no longer actually living, your relationship, but just the fantasy of it, the idea of your relationship, or the idea of who your partner is. All right, those are the things that all have to do with how you interact with yourself. Over and over again, I'll say this to you. It doesn't matter if you're with your soulmate or with your twin soul or whatever these concepts entail. The execution, the living a high vibe relationship always comes down to the truthfulness, the integrity, and the values that you have for yourself, this navigation tool that you have within yourself that helps you to determine if something is life promoting, if it's expansive for you, if it is loving and kind, if it is something that helps you grow, or if it is something that restricts you, something that makes you have to cope, something that makes you have to hide yourself or be restricted in a certain way. That would be sort of the definition of a low vibe relationship. Of course, the subject is extremely complex, and I've just tried to give a lot of roundup here on what these main aspects of high vibe relationship, what they mean. There are all your questions here that I would like to address right now, and please continue asking questions here live. A very good question asked by Charlize is, how do we balance a mutual healthy desire, a lower vibratory sort of sexual arousal and love in a true love relationship? And this opens up, a whole different question, and that is not just in regards to sexuality, but how we regard things. Who says that sexuality is a lower vibratory aspect or issue in our life? Anything that has to do with our body, with our emotions and our thinkingness, guys, is something that is bound to this 3D human experience, all right? And it is a big mistake to look at human needs and human desires as low vibratory. That is not the case. It is less, there is a slower vibration in those 3D aspects in our life than there is in these higher vibratory, sort of more spiritual, more grace-based and heart-based goals, but they're not low as in bad. Okay, this is one of the big misunderstandings that I see here within this spiritual scene. Okay, that certain aspects of our humanness, all right, that they are lower and that they are therefore bad, and that they need to be repressed, and that they cannot come, that it's bad to feel that way, and that feeling anger is bad. It's the same aspect, of judging our emotions, guys. Okay, there are no good or bad emotions. There are only good or bad enactments of emotions or certain states. So we can all, and we do, fluctuate throughout different vibratory states in a day, and sexuality is a part of one of our fundamental needs. All right, so we have needs such as eating and shelter, and we want to feel safe, we want to feel protected, we want to feel connected, we want to have sort of this mutual physical experience. This is all anchored in our DNA, in our instincts and in our conditioning. So therefore, this is part of being a human. And remember, we are a soul with a body, meaning that we are a higher vibratory, sort of a multidimensional being here with a 3D experience. 3D compared to multidimensional basically says a lower vibratory experience. So our experience as a human here in this world, in and of itself, is lower relative to, let's say, the dimensional experience as a soul, or as an etheric being. But it's part of this existence, okay? So we cannot judge it and say this is a bad thing. Obviously, we have to regulate these things within the relationship, because it can't be that, this is the aspect of mutuality, all right? That only my, sort of human needs are getting covered or need to be covered, and yours are irrelevant. So obviously, everything that I mentioned earlier plays into this. We have to learn how to regulate and how to communicate our needs and desires. Sexuality is just one part of this. there are issues with sexuality, just as there can be issues with other aspects of relationships, and they often indicate when there are overall sort of vibrational issues. For instance, trust. For instance, manipulation. For instance, abusiveness, lots of push-pull, and so forth. And yes, we have gender specifics there. But on an energetic level, there really is no difference between masculine and feminine impulses here, all right? The feminine energy that we all have in us is the one that is more of a nurturing and space-giving energy, and the masculine energy that we all have within us is a more directed, goal-oriented energy, and both are needed to create this unity and to create creation, to manifest. And so we all need to learn how to harmonize this within. All right, so basically learning how to regulate our energies from within, and this is a big part of what we do here at transCODES, teaching people how to regulate not just emotions, not just physical drives, not just their thinkingness, which for most of us isn't even aware to us that that's actually a big part of our relationship problems, is the thinkingness behind it, but also the energetic aspects of that. So there is a regulation, a self-regulation that we all need as a skill for a high vibe relationship. Then things such as human drives, for example, sexuality or food, or whatever the sort of whatever this drive is based on, whatever need this based on, is no problem, because we can communicate this, and we are empathic enough to feel what the other needs, and we know how to harmonize this. So communication is the skill. All right, and the more the more truthful we communicate out in the open, the less has to happen in the unseen, in the in this sort of manipulative and projective way. All right, so let me be very, very clear about this. The more projection, okay, the more problems, the lower the vibration. Okay, that's as simple as it gets. And so another question here from Ron: how do we perform this inner alchemy of joining the inner masculine and feminine energies? And how can this be expressed in a relationship? This is everything I talked about here is about the alchemy of love. So if we want to go into a mutual relationship that is based on love, and that allows sort of this mutual love to transmute some of these say more sort of lower vibratory. I don't want you guys to get into the habit of judging your lower vibratory needs or anything like that. I really want you to understand that that these aspects of love in relationships, that they have really nothing to do with men and women. They don't even have anything to do with romantic relationships. It's really a matter of relationship or quality of relationship, love relationship with ourselves. So love in relationships as the mirror, the unconditional mirror of divine love in us, coming into this expression here as total reflection of our true self for ourselves. All right, this is basically what a high vibe relationship, internal and external, expresses. It's the expression of a mutual, harmonious energy exchange with the sole purpose of healing, creation, and synergetic soul expansion. Okay, growth, in other words. So this alchemy of love that you are referring to, the transmutation of problems or challenges through love, is very real, but not the kind of love that most people understand. All right, so love can heal. Love in and of itself as an energetic resonance is extremely healing. All right, but it is not the the cause. It is the consequence of heeding all these other aspects that we've talked about earlier. So we cannot really find love, all right, because it's not anything that is comes in from the external world. It is something that we have to execute from within. And so the highest vibe relationships, guys, are possible between two people that understand that, and that understand that their love for themselves, okay, having made themselves the subject of love, of expressing this divine love that comes through all of us here on this 3D plane, that is, what makes it high vibe, all right? And so aspects such as soulmate or concepts such as soulmate, guys, are extremely misleading, and in that way, probably also very dangerous. All right, so this whole soulmate idea that there is this one person out there that could, sort of fulfill all my needs and can mind read and is okay with everything and so forth. Think about this, after all the things that we've just talked about. What does this mean? Do you want to be with somebody who just eats all your crap, really? I mean, this is not what a high vibe relationship is about. All right? A soulmate, or, we'll get to twin soul here in a second, is merely somebody who resonates with you on an energetic level, on an unseen level. It's this chemistry, or sometimes it can be karmic, where you feel this really, really strong connection with a person, maybe past life related, or something that makes you feel there is a strong connection. And this is a part of your energetic sensitivity, okay? You pick up on people that have a similar resonance and that have a similar purpose or a similar task here in life, and you find them through listening to those things. But this doesn't mean that this person is just made for you and that you have to make it work, and without them you cannot feel whole. Those are all misguided sort of ego ideas, okay? It's coming back to this holding on and trying to control, and it's this push-pull idea, that that once you found this person that shares the same, like, say, soul purpose or soul or karmic healing aspect, that you have to hold on to this no matter what. The reason why this is often toxic, actually, is because the main purpose here, namely the purpose of mutual healing and mutual growth, is being overseen. Most of these soulmate and also twin soul or twin flame relationships that you guys encounter in your life, or that you think you've encountered, are nothing but karmic relationships, are nothing but energetic resonances that come out of maybe having experienced the same pain, or having experienced the same or similar things in this lifetime or past lifetimes, if you believe in past lives, and offering you an opportunity, okay, to grow and heal together. All right, so this would be my definition here of soulmate or twin flame or twin soul, that someone who resonates with us on this deep energetic and karmic level offers an opportunity for higher vibratory solutions, but it is not a guarantee. And the moment you externalize this to the other partner, and the moment you try to control this and hang on to this, is exactly the moment when you run into all these devastating issues, abuse issues, and so forth. Empath, narcissist, stereotype relationships are often, especially here in the spiritual scene, enmeshed in this whole twin soul, twin flame, soulmate idea. All right, because one of the specialities, the hallmarks of narcissism, is to play directly into this fantasy of yours that most of you, without knowing, actually project out. And so this whole sort of spiritual awakening scene in New Age has unfortunately provided a stage, a huge, humongous stage for narcissism, and has led to an even more effective way of manipulating and abusing people, because they now believe that they are energetically bound with another. Empaths are, sort of masters in absorption, and narcissists are masters in projection, guys. Okay, if you are energetically sensitive, if you are empathetic, and you are attracted to the same kind of abusive person, then that's because you are unable to discern what's yours and what isn't. Okay, narcissists project. Energetically sensitives also tend to project, but for a different reason, for different agenda. So the narcissistic agenda is always the same. It's serving self-gain, exploitativeness, and often degradation, leading to abuse of the other party. Okay, the agenda, or the intention of the empath is often, this sort of trying to control. It's a covert form of manipulation as well, but trying to hang on, trying to hold on, and trying to get what they need without actually having to express it, without actually having to enforce healthy boundaries. So yeah, guys, this is a huge, huge subject, as you can see. And I know that my opinion here about twin soul and twin flame relationships isn't very popular. I've written lots of articles about this in the past years, and I have a modality here where I actually work with this energy, and this is something that can be seen. Okay, so there is something like a twin soul, twin flame energy that is visible in the etheric. But I tell you what this really means. This is for you guys, advanced energy workers, what this truly means. Yes, there is a split, there is a fracture that happens here upon incarnation into this 3D world. It is basically the duality in which we have to that we have to live with. We have to live with the knowingness of being an eternal soul here in this 3D limited reality that is mortal. Okay, so that's the ego split that we all have, the ego duality that we all have to contend with. All right, and for that to happen, our energy split into more or less three different kinds of energy, mother, father, and child energies. And for the most part here, this timeline, the time and space restrictions in 3D makes us having to grow through these different developmental stages of 3D. So this is what emotional and intellectual and spiritual maturity then is all about. And when a person is able to grow into this inner unification, this transmutation of all these dualities, that is when you can see their soul basically remerging. Okay, this is basically what I call soulfulness or soul embodiment. So when a person transmutes all this within themselves and goes into the unity of this masculine and feminine and inner child energy within, okay, into the highest expression of the inner relationship, all right, this is when you can see these two fractured parts merging. And this can sometimes be triggered when you meet another person, especially if it's between people who are energetically sensitive. They can see this sometimes, but it's misunderstood. We think it is the energy of the other person, but it really isn't. So for those of you out there who know a little more about energy work and so forth, twin soul energies do exist, but there's something completely different than people think. They are the sort of expression of this inner reunification soul embodiment. All right, and when two people can come together that are aware of these things and that know what the skills are that are needed for this is when we can talk, of a high vibe relationship. When there are two true selves, authentic selves, and they come together and they know what the purpose of this relationship is, and they know how to bring this into expression. All right, that's when you have a high vibe relationship. And I'm not sure if this is just here a delay today, but I'm not really seeing your questions, guys. Or maybe it is that you don't have any questions. I received so many questions up front and tried to answer them here with some of this lecture. I just want you guys to know that we can, of course, talk more about this. So there's a poll on my YouTube channel. You can let me know what kind of subjects or specific, what kind of relationship subjects you would like to address. But I need to move on now. We have a huge gracefulness marathon going on here at transCODES. So I see you guys, those of you who support me on Patreon. You can get the weekly energy tips there with a more detailed energy update. And please, check out the YouTube channel with all those explainer videos and so forth. Thank you guys for coming. Sorry I couldn't really see your live questions here today. See you next Sunday, same time. Bye-bye.